Yeah, Rahu. So I always love doing my section on Rahu and Ketu for every nakshatra. So this is something I was supposed to premeditate on this and I didn't. Let's say Vic begins, no, we're going to begin with Ketu. So what if we have Ketu in Anuradha? Ketu in Anuradha can either have Rahu in Rohini or Rahu in Kritika, and each of those will be a different nakshatra interpretation. Ketu in Anuradha suggests frigid. So first of all, let's look at the negative qualities of Ketu in Anuradha. Vic Dicara tells us that there can be a frigidity or a need for emotionally and psychologically intense intercourse. Ketu is, of course, the shadow graha that is represents a deep root inside of all of us. If you have Ketu and Anuradha, this is a very deep part of your soul's evolutionary plan. You're especially going to feel Ketu and Anuradha open up when you're 36. You're going to feel interactions with it when you're 43, when Rahu matures. And then at 48, the themes related to this Anuradha nakshatra are going to bloom like a flower, for better and for worse, at the age of 48. And you're going to really know what your Anuradha energy is all about. Ketu in Anuradha is going to be very, very into this energy of bonding and connecting at the friend level, at this sort of soul bond that we know from Mitra. Ketu is going to always be looking for people who have a soul bond, the soul kinship. But because Ketu, how it works is that it's smoky. We're so close to it. It's a very important part of our emotional security paradigm. In fact, it's so important, like I often say, I wouldn't be here talking with you guys on YouTube, smiling with all this energy, if I didn't have Ketu operating in my life. Now, everyone has Ketu in different places that build this energetic security so that we can put energy with a smile and relish into our material affairs in the world. With Ketu, the Anuradha Ketu person is probably going to need the feeling of, for example, so what happens with Ketu is that we kind of feel like we've mastered it and we psychically anticipate it. And so we will almost, I call it a false pizza. It's like we're eating this cardboard pizza because we know we crave pizza so much that we just make it out of cardboard. We put like fake cheese on it, like little shreds of paper, and we eat this thing, calling it pizza and telling ourselves, this is pizza, this is pizza, this is pizza, because it's so critical to our emotional paradigm to eat this pizza. Now, if we were to actually eat a real piece of pizza, it would shatter us, because this means that I have not been eating the real pizza. This means that I've not been happy. This means that I've not been actually as stable as I would like to be. And that also means I got to let go of my fake pizza. And I got to get real cheese and I got to get real flour. It's much more of a deep process. The fake pizza is always easier to make. That's why we pull it together and tell ourselves that this is what my needs are. And as time goes on, you're going to realize that there's a real expression of your Ketu that is narrow, that is complete, and ultimately it'll never be as satisfying as what you think you can build in your imagination. We can make ourselves think that the false pizza is the best, but it's when you eat a real pizza, it'll never be as good as what you thought it would be in your imagination. It's only until Ketu matures that you realize that this is it. and this is the best way for me to get in line with this, is to accept the fact that my soul has form, and this is the form my soul is taking, and to not resist it. I've been doing a lot of work on Ketu and Rahu lately. So for Ketu and Anuradha, how I'd bring this together is that, you know, if you have Ketu and Anuradha, there's a desire to bond. And to bond with people at the level of soul kinship. Birds of a feather. And if that is so critical to your emotional security paradigm, you're going to connect with people looking for that. And you think that you're good at finding people who have this shared soul connection. And if you don't, if you don't actually know how to have that soul connection, you're going to make yourself feel like you do. So you're going to essentially be connecting with people, not because there's a true soul connection there, but because you want a soul connection. And you're going to make yourself believe that me and this person are soulmates. Me and this person in this band that I'm with are soulmates. We've done this a million times together, and we work well together, and we laugh together, and I know it. And it's because it's your desperation to get out of suffering that keeps you in the suffering. It's your desperation to find a soul partner that keeps true soul partners away from you. And so Ketu and Anuradha eventually has to let it go, let the universe put it in your lap. And then all of a sudden you'll find that it has been there the whole time. There's been opportunities for it right in front of you. You've just been ignoring it because your ego was enjoying the false pizza. I feel pretty good about how I described that. So Ketu will go in turns of craving soul kinship with people, and sometimes even, will experience soul kinship, feel that they don't like it, and then ignore it for a long time. Usually, especially from 0 to 36, you'll probably feel like blending with people at the soul level is such an intense thing that it's almost too intense to really get into and enjoy it. But around 36 into your 40s, you're going to learn that this is something you have to experience and let go of your resistance to it. Now, if you have Rahu in Rohini and Ketu in Anuradha, it's going to be different from having Rahu in Anuradha. If you have Ketu in Anuradha, Rahu in Rohini, that's going to be one interpretation. If you have Ketu in Anuradha and Rahu in Kritika, it's going to be another interpretation, because the Kritika nakshatra, the Rahu nakshatra is going to bring different things out of the Anuradha nakshatra. So I digress. Eventually I'd like to make a video discussing Ketu in this nakshatra, Rahu in this nakshatra, but there's a lot there. I'm only 32, so if I keep doing this for a while, maybe I'll eventually get there. Now let's talk about Rahu in Anuradha. Rahu, first, let's read what Vic Dicara says. Again, for similar reasons, we see that there's, Rahu will be a bit different from Ketu. Rahu has Rahu has some affliction going on in Anuradha, and in general it brings this affliction. Remember, all the planets have a good or bad relationship with the nakshatra, grahas, I should say, and Rahu is a graha that has a certain relationship with Anuradha, and it's a tricky one because it's kind of negative. What we read is that when Rahu is in Anuradha, there's an exaggerated sexual need, and it attracts unstable relationships. So Rahu in Anuradha has exaggerated sexual needs for bonding and intercourse, and sort of almost even like attention, and has unstable relationships. So with Rahu, it's likely what's going to happen with Rahu in Anuradha is that you are going to crave the soul kinship. You're going to crave the mitra, the feeling that, like, the soulmate merging together. The feeling that this person and I are two birds of a soul feather. and that we are together in the soul, and that there's a deep connection there with us that's there regardless of what happens. No matter what, me and this person are like peanut butter and jam. We blend together well, and that good arousing energy that I feel from this person is worth me holding on to them no matter what. And the craving that Rahu has for absolute perfect experiences, wherever it is, it will always be disappointed. Life is never as perfect as Rahu hopes for it to be. But Rahu is going to, it's a head with no body. It doesn't feel how much it's infinite, it's abysmal. But that's part of the spirituality of Rahu. Rahu, how it usually operates is that you go completely hard, no holds barred. You go for broke on whatever Rahu is signified by. And by the time that you realize that you're in a state of, you're not letting reality give it to you organically and naturally. And Rahu will teach you this by being gluttonous about that thing, to the point where that thing, you'll never find that. You'll never find exactly what Rahu is looking for. What you'll find is slightly less versions of what you're expecting. And what Rahu needs to do is essentially accept that there's a limited expanse for how much the Rahu can enjoy and experience what it seeks. In this case, this is soul bonding. And so Rahu is going to sort of really, like, what Rahu will do is kind of pin the person, or say to the person, you're not perfect because of this reason, and it's not you, it's me. That's a very Rahu and Anuradha statement. It's not that you're perfect in your own way, but I'm looking for a person who is like this. And the Rahu is going to the Rahu and Anuradha person will press on the person to bond with me in the way that I want to be bonded with. And the person will do it if they love you. They'll put up with it for a long time, but eventually they're going to have to use their voice. I recommend that you listen to the voice of your partner and say, when they tell you, I do love you, but this expectation that you have of me is unrealistic. I'm not that thing. And you might stomp around and say, well, looks like we're not really soulmates after all. And then you go away from that person, you might think about it, and you think, like, at some level with Rahu, you're just going to have to search for the least of the evils in people that you could be bunking with. And if you've got several people who you feel have the possibility of being the soul mate for you, you got to think of the least unsoul bonded, the least of the evils. And if you have a person who loves you, who is close enough, but whom you really feel ultimately like this is a person who has love, they're communicating with me, they're going to show you, Rahu and Anuradha is going to bring partners who show you where your expectations are unrealistic and fantastic and almost hallucinatory and delusional about expecting a person's soul to be a certain way. You're looking for this perfect soul, and nobody is ever going to satisfy it, but you'll probably attract lovers who remind you that this is probably close enough. Like, really reach deep down into your soul. Feel what we've built together. Everything that we've been through together. And now I'm just here being honest with you about what's really in my soul. And hopefully comes a point where you're pulling the imaginary mirror out of people for them to perfectly reflect the perfect partner for you, they'll do that for you for a while because your Rahu seems to bring it out. And that's where this exaggerated sexual need comes from. It's all, you're this thing, you're this thing, you're this thing. And the sexual energy comes out very strongly, and it can bring unstable partnerships. And hopefully, at some point in your life, probably especially around 36, around 43, what's going to happen is that your Ketu, which is probably going to be falling in Kritika or Rohini, is going to open up and recognize that there is an individuated part of you that you need to settle on within yourself, and that you can't look for your soul to be saved by your partner. And therefore, in Kritika, it's I need to work things out independently, and Anuradha is a relationship karma, Anuradha Rahu. So if you've got Kritika Ketu, Anuradha is a relationship karma that brings you back to yourself. If you've got Rohini Ketu, Anuradha is a relationship karma that reminds you of what a natural and healthy relationship is supposed to look like, so that you can be independent within a mature, bonded relationship. Rohini's bigger on the relationship theme, Rohini Ketu. Kritika Ketu is more focused on the independence issue. But in either case, you've got Rahu and Anuradha, and the Rahu and Anuradha karma is going to bring out and exacerbate the delusion of seeking perfection in another person, which is obstructing your relationships and obstructing your partner's ability to just be honest about who they are. Yeah, I feel good about that. I'm getting better at this Rahu Ketu thing, I think. But that's coming from my own brain. I hope you guys think so too. Let me know in the comments.